On ESPN television, Ace Bailey going to Utah. What's really going to happen here? Is he going to want to be there? And free agency getting going on Monday with the legal tampering period starting. Player options with LeBron and James Harden. All this stuff is going on. And of course, the number one sport in our country is football in the NFL. And there have been some storylines that have developed here this week. You just heard the voice of Laura Rutledge and Marcus Spears. And shout out to Laura Rutledge, who was amazing with us this week and a wonderful host of NFL Live. But Marcus Spears made the comment about Jayden Daniels and that he expects him to be the top quarterback in the NFC East, to which CC followed up and said, well, if that's the case, and if he's better this year than Jalen Hurts, and if he's better in year 2 than Dak Prescott, then we're talking about a guy that should have gone one spot higher in the draft, and that, of course, was Caleb Williams' spot, which leads us into the question about fair expectations for Caleb. In year 2, what does success look like?
I think success for Caleb Williams is definitively being one of the top 2 quarterbacks in the NFC North. You're talking about a division that has Jared Goff, Jordan Love, and J.J. McCarthy. If you can show that you're a top 2 quarterback, then that means that your team each and every year is going to have a pretty good chance at being able to punch their ticket and get to the postseason. What we've seen over the last half decade is that if you have the best quarterback in the division, you're going to be in the playoffs more often than not. And I think that's what the Chicago Bears envisioned when they drafted Caleb Williams. That's what they envisioned when they went out and got Ben Johnson as their head coach. It's the impetus for them being able to fortify the interior of that offensive line and add another pass catcher with the top 10 pick. Caleb Williams is flush with talent and experience coaching on that staff that Ben Johnson has been able to put together. Now, I get it. His head coach has never worn a hat and been the guy on the sideline, but he's the person that everybody identified as the one to be able to get Caleb Williams to unlock that immense potential. So this is on Caleb Williams now to take advantage of everything that the Chicago Bears have put in place. He's been vocal about who he wanted for the Chicago Bears to pick up as their head coach after they fired Matt Eberflus. He got the coach on his wish list. He's got all of the weapons. He's got the offensive line. It's up to him to be able to deliver.
For sure. And I like that measuring stick, one of the top 2 quarterbacks in the division, because normally if you're having that much individual success, you're going to have team success.
No doubt.
But I'm going to judge his individual success by the team. What is the team able to do? Because last year, you were 5-12. The other 3 teams in your division not only went to the playoffs, they had double-digit wins. And you need to take a big step forward, not only personally, but as a collective. So I think success in year 2 for Caleb Williams is them making the playoffs. The Chicago Bears need to make the playoffs this year. And I know on the surface that might seem a little harsh because it is only year 2 of Caleb Williams. It's year 1 with him and Ben Johnson. And you don't know what Ben Johnson is going to be like because, as you mentioned, he's never done this before. He's a great offensive coordinator, but we don't know what he's going to be like as a head coach. But success looks like them taking a step forward. They need to get to the playoffs this year.
Just to push back a little bit, if they go 10-7 or 9-8 and they don't make the playoffs, which is possible, that's an unsuccessful season?
It may be an incremental improvement, but do you think they'll view that as a success?
If they have a winning record and don't make the playoffs and he is a bus driver to their winning record, I don't know how you can't look at that as a success for that organization.
Yeah, 4-win improvement, that's pretty good.
Can I ask a question, though? Because as you guys were talking about this, and I wish I would have come up with this earlier, but I just thought of this. Not who you think is better, but perception around the person. How come it feels like we are glass half full with Bryce Young, who has been way worse than Caleb Williams so far, and glass half empty with Caleb Williams, who's been better than Bryce Young?
Because
the
expectations for Bryce Young coming out of college were not the same as they were for Caleb Williams.
Was the number 1 pick in the draft.
He sure was.
Well, Bryce Young went to a much worse situation with the Carolina Panthers. Think about the state of ownership under David Tepper with Carolina. We were talking about how he's one of the worst owners in all of sports.
Yes.
Think about the churn that they've had at the head coaching position. Not that that hasn't existed in Chicago, but it's at a different level. We were saying when Caleb Williams got taken with the number 1 overall pick that he's walking into the best situation that any number 1 pick has ever walked into as a quarterback in the NFL draft. Nobody ever said that about Bryce Young going to the Carolina Panthers.
That is an amazingly ironic statement you just made because it is 100% true. But the reason that we are holding Caleb to this standard is because of the fact that we deemed the Chicago Bears to be a good situation. And And now we are deeming them to be the same old Bears. But there was a window where, like, Caleb is walking into a good spot. In a way, would he have benefited, oddly enough, from being in a messy spot?
No, because I don't know. No, because I don't think anybody wants to have the career arc that Bryce Young has had. Nobody wants to go through being benched at the beginning of your second season, only to find your way back into the starting lineup. But I think the reason why we have so much optimism around Bryce Young coming into this year is because he won 4 of his final 9 games in the regular season. They finished with the same exact record in terms of team success, but the trajectory for Bryce Young, as opposed to what we saw from Caleb Williams last year, is on the opposite end of the spectrum. Think about it. The Bears got out to a good start and then floundered down the stretch. Bryce Young and the Carolina Panthers are just the opposite. So we feel better about the Carolina Panthers going into this season because we saw them push the Kansas City Chiefs to the limit. We saw them push the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, a playoff team, to the limit. We saw them in a one-possession game against the Philadelphia Eagles. We saw them beat the Arizona Cardinals. We saw them beat the Atlanta Falcons in the regular season finale. Like, they played, for the most part, closely contested games in the second half of the season, and that's the improvement that we wanted to see from Bryce Young, and that's the impact that we wanted him to have on team success. We got the opposite from Caleb Williams,
Right.
which is why there's so much pressure on him coming into year 2.
And the Seth Wickersham report about him not wanting to be in Chicago and him saying, I'm not ready to nuke the city, and not ultimately going that route where we saw kind of an Ace Bailey type situation where he's forcing his way somewhere else. But that's going to stay with him. And that adds to those expectations, whether it's fair or not.
So playoffs for Smalls, CC winning record, and overall improvement for you in terms of what success looks like. Give me a winning record and let me be clear. You have improved on these issues, including holding the ball too long and not taking sacks, etc., for Caleb Williams in year 2. We're on sports from the NFL per ESPN.com. And Adam, the NFL found that he violated its personal conduct policy. The league announced Thursday Tucker could serve the suspension as a free agent and is free to sign with an NFL team. If he were to sign with a team, he could attend training camp and play in preseason games before the suspension starts August 26th. He's eligible for reinstatement on November 11th, the NFL said. Tucker was accused of sexual misconduct by 16 massage therapists from 8 high-end spas and wellness centers in the Baltimore area, according to the Baltimore Banner. All of the alleged misconduct reportedly occurred between 2012 and 2016 during Tucker's first 5 seasons in the NFL. They released him on the 5th of May, and Tucker's representative, Rob Roach, released this statement. We are disappointed in the NFL's decision. Justin has always strived to carry himself in a way that would make his family and community proud. He stands by his previous statements in order to put this difficult episode behind him and get back on the field as soon as possible. We have advised Justin to accept this resolution and close this matter. Obviously, these allegations are extremely strong. These allegations are well sourced and credible from the Baltimore Banner, and these allegations make you think of the victims and not the alleged person that did these things. So those 16 people tragically have to allegedly deal with this forever. And that is the horrible part of this, not the football part.
Of course. But what I can't reconcile is them saying, based on our findings, we believe that you violated the personal conduct policy. So they're acknowledging that some part of this they have found to be detrimental to the league, and this behavior they do not support. Whatever was alleged from these 16 people, the NFL has said, we believe it to a certain extent. I know there's legalities involved in this, but that we are going to suspend you for the first 10 weeks of the season. So you're absolving it in some way, or you're trying to say that it's only worth 10 weeks of him not being able to play? That's where I can't wrap my head around this, because if you have done your findings here and you think that there is truth behind this and maybe you want to wait for everything to still play out, then what is the message that you are sending as the NFL? What's the message that you're sending to these alleged victims, these 16 people who have come forward about this, that whatever they dealt with is only worth 10 weeks of an NFL season? That's what I can't rationalize.
Yeah, the NFL wants to be seen as doing something, and without going too far into it, because we haven't seen the investigative reports, I think that they felt like they needed to make a decision in a timely fashion as we get ready for teams to gear up for reporting to training camp next month in late July. So I think that the NFL wanted to take decisive action, but Smalls, I can't tell you whether or not they got it right, because I don't know what to believe and what not to believe. All I can acknowledge is that it is a very uncomfortable fact pattern, and based on that alone, I think the NFL was forced into doing something. But let me be clear about one thing when it comes to Justin Tucker. Right now, he's on the outs in the NFL. He doesn't have a job, and I don't think it's a situation where Tucker couldn't bounce back after he served his suspension and catch on with the team. But I think of what the scenario is that he's facing with the 10-game suspension, and then I think back to how bad he was last year, and I have a hard time seeing an NFL deeming it worth the risk to bring him into their organization. The PR is awful, but let's be honest about one thing. The PR was awful with Deshaun Watson, and yet the Cleveland Browns still decided to trade for him because they thought he was good at football. If teams thought that Justin Tucker could help their cause, help them to get to the playoffs, compete for a championship, they would be...
Chào tất cả mọi người đã quay trở lại với kênh của mình. Bây giờ mình sẽ tiếp tục hướng dẫn các bạn làm hoa.
Ồ, cái bữa mà không thấy. Mình nghĩ tới cái giờ mà. Để đây có cái gì đấy để đi tôi check hàng rồi. Mỗi lần xây cho một cổng tường lá chắn 10 đó là chừng 5 gram mỗi lần. Tiếp được sao như vậy được
Hôm nay coi anh ăn lắm. Ơi, anh ăn gì? Ăn gì á? Hôm nay coi anh ăn gì?
Vui
Chưa ăn gì?